Hello, hello, hello. How have you all been? How have the lessons been so far? Have you been getting knowledge? How are you doing? All right, today we are going to be talking about role-based access control. And our objective for the class is number one, to understand the basic concept of role-based access control, identify the key components of role-based access control, explore how role-based access control can be applied in different environments, identify the importance and challenges of implementing role-based access control, and identifying the potential role-based access control bypass techniques. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, so for one thing, what exactly is role-based access control? So role-based access control is a security framework that restricts access to resources based on the roles of individual users within an organization. Role-based access control allows organizations to assign permission to users based on their job functions and responsibilities rather than on individual basis. So basically, let's just break this down. Role-based access control simply means that individuals in an organization are allowed to access certain resources, allowed to perform certain actions, right, based on what their job description, based on what they have been employed to do. It's like let's say a developer now, let's say it's an IT firm, right? The person that comes in as a developer has access to make changes to the code base, make changes to the raw, like share to the code, to the applications that they are working on. While someone that is employed as a financial person in that same organization, in that IT organization, have access to edit the financial documents, have access to see the in and outs of the finances of the company. So they are employed in the same company, but they have different roles and they have different responsibilities, and therefore their ability to edit or their ability to access some resources is going to be based on their JD, based on their job description. You get, so it allows organizations to assign permissions to users based on their job function and based on their responsibility, and it is easier to manage access control and ensure that only that users only have access to the resources that they need. So basically, the financial person will not have access to the code base, will not have access to see the code that they are using to generate or to create the application, while the developer, the person that's employed to be a developer, will not have access to the financial records of the company, will not have access to the payroll of the company. You get, so it just basically like you are assigning permissions, or you are assigning access to information or access to resources based on what the person came to the company to do, based on their job description, based on what they were employed for. And if their job description change, maybe someone that is came in as a HR personnel, has learned coding and decided to go and become a developer, the permissions will change. The person will no longer have access to the financial records of the company and so, but will now become a developer and have access to the code base. So it all depends on the job description. So role-based access control just simply means that, okay, I am giving permissions, or I'm giving access to these resources based on what this person has come to the company to do, based on their job description and based on their responsibility. All right, so why role-based access control? Why is it important? Why are we going this route? Why are we not just when you come in, everybody have access? Why are we not saying, okay, if you come in, what's your job? Okay, I am an IT person. So we'll now go and be assigning everything to you one by one. Why do we first of all create a role and call the role IT personnel, right? And then we will now give that role a permission and then add certain users that come into the company and say, okay, you're an IT personnel. All right, you have this permission, you have this role. Okay, so why is it important? So it simplifies access management. So role-based access control simplify access control by grouping users into roles and defining permission for those roles. So basically, it simplifies access management in the sense that, for example, in an organization, there is this there's a role called IT there's a role called IT support, right? So in IT support, you have access to the network configuration, you have access to some softwares to help to support individuals rather than like let's say we come into the company and we have like they are employing new people and they're employing three new IT support personnel rather than the administrator say, oh, what's your name? My name is Femi. I'm an IT. I came in as an IT support person. You now go and assign, oh, Femi has the ability to edit this document. Femi has the ability to delete user. Femi has the ability to add user. Rather than doing everything one by one, what would the administrator do? The administrator will just go and create a role and call that role um IT support. Then he will now give all the permissions that an IT personnel needs. So permissions like, oh, you can add user, you can remove user, you can create user, you can have access, a little bit of access to the network and stuff like that. And we now give all those permissions to that particular role. So if somebody comes to the organization and say, oh, I'm Femi, I am an IT support, what the administrator just have to do is to just assign that person to that role. Just say, okay, let me add Femi to this role, to this IT support role I have created. That way, the administrator will know how to be doing everything one by one, which makes it simple to manage, which makes it management or making access management a lot more simpler. So this reduces the complexity of managing access for each individual users, making it manageable, scalable, and less error prone. So because you're not doing everything one by one, you're not assigning permissions one by one, you there are less chances of you making errors. So number two is to enhance security. Role-based access control enforces the principle of least privilege, ensuring that the user only have the permissions necessary to perform their specific role. So basically, it has security in the sense that certain roles are created. So when these roles are created, they are assigned like least privileges. So all the privilege, just the right amount of privilege you need to perform to like not just the right amount of privilege you need to perform your job, to perform your JD. You understand? So that is the privilege that is given to you, just the right amount of privilege. So this will help to enhance security because you're not giving more than you need to give. You understand? You're not giving anything more than you need to give. And just everybody that is coming in for this role has this privilege, has this level of privilege. So you are not doing extra, you're not assigning more than the person needs for their particular job because you already know the role. You get it's not like as if the person wants you already know the role. And if there is a need that the person needs to use more, you can now give the person that permission individually based on a specific period of time, and after that you can remove the privilege. So number three is improve compliance. Role-based access control help organization adhere to regulatory or and compliance requirements by providing a structured and auditable access control mechanism. So basically, like we've talked about the fact that we have regulatory bodies when it comes to cyber security. Like every organization is mandated to follow these regulatory bodies, and one of the requirements of these regulatory bodies is either role access control or like least privilege. So if you follow role-based access control, you are indirectly adhering to the regulations, you understand, so that you don't have to face certain fines. Because when they come and audit your organization, they say that okay, everybody has access to everything, you'll be fined or you'll be asked to explain. So the next point is effective user onboarding and offboarding. So one thing for sure is that in an organization, people will come, people will go. You understand? You employ new workers, old workers will leave. So in order to ensure that offboarding and onboarding. So offboarding is the process of somebody leaving your organization. Onboarding is the process of someone joining your organization. To simplify the process of adding users or removing users when they leave the organization, creating a role matters. So for example, you have an IT support role now. If we employ three people, you can just add those three users to the role to the role. And when one person is going, you can just remove that user and say, okay, yeah, this person is no longer a part of this thing, rather than going individually to remove all the permissions of that particular user you get. So it makes it efficient when you're offboarding and onboarding users. Then adaptability and scalability. So as organization grow and change, role-based access control can easily adapt to accommodate new roles and permissions. So as the organization is growing, let's say before you guys just it was a startup and there was no IT manager before. But as you guys progress, there's now an IT manager. So all you need to do is to go and create a role called IT manager, assign that role some permissions, then now add the user for that role and say, okay, this user now has the permission to manage the IT facilities and stuff like that. Then streamline auditing and reporting. So role-based access control provides a clear and auditable framework for monitoring and reporting on users' access. So auditors can easily track who has access to what resources. So with role-based access control, you can easily track, okay, who has access to these resources, because as you assign the role also has like users as added to it. So when somebody perform a particular action or a particular execute a particular task or execute a particular function, the individual or the user that executed that function would be logged. You understand? So when you are doing audit, when you are auditing, when the auditors come to check your organizations, right, they can be able to say, okay, this user has access to this, and he has access to this because he is of this role, he has this role. You understand? Then number seven, or number what is number seven, I think. So it is reduce human error. So since role-based access control reduce the need for manual fine-grained permissions assignment, it minimizes the risk of human error in access management. So when we talk about access management, so this is it, like it helps to reduce human error. Just imagine that you are an organization of 10, of 100 rather, of 100 users, of 100 employees, of 100 staffs, right? And the administrator have to go one by one to every user and add permissions and remove permissions and stuff like that. There might be errors. You understand? There might be errors. So when you use robot access control, you know you can just group everything. And if there is a mistake when it comes to what do you call it? When it comes to permissions, you can just remove it from one row. Let's imagine that there are 10 employees in that one row and there is a mistake. So what you can do is just go and edit the role and privileges. But if it was like you're not using role-based access control, you will have to go to those 10 individuals one by one to remove those permissions you get. So that's why I say it reduce human error. So the next part is the key component of role-based access control. Number one is roles. Roles are a fundamental component of role-based, from the name, role-based access control. It's like the fundamental of it. A role represents set of permissions of access rights associated with a specific job function, responsibility, or task within an organization. So for example, now you have a manager, you have the manager role, the IT manager role, right? So what exactly is your role? The role is IT manager, but their IT manager has certain permissions and certain access rights that he has to like have permissions to do, you understand? So basically, if as an IT manager you handle the network, you handle the devices, the laptops, the systems, you handle some certain software. So in your role, like when you say, oh, role manager, that job description now, those permissions be there. Oh, manager role can edit social documents. Manager role can create social documents. Manager role can onboard these resources. Manager role can do this. Manager role can do that. Do you get? So basically, a role is like your job description, but in a digital form. So your role is like your job description. Oh, you got employed for this role. Now, your job description in digital form, you can access this document because of this role. You can edit this document because of this role. So all the group of those permissions that you have, the group of it is actually called a role. You get, so when you group all those permissions together and give it a title and say, okay, when somebody can do all these things, this person is a developer. When someone can do all these things, this person is the lawyer of the organization. You have access to the legal documents of the organization. You say, okay, this person, you understand, has this role, or this is the role concerning, let's say a manager. Now this is the role for this manager, this is the role for this administrator. The set of permissions that that role intertwines, or that role like has, you understand. So that is what a role is when it comes to role-based access control. Roles help categorize users based on their roles or duties within an organization. It's basically your job description is what is going to be translated to your set of permissions in the digital form. So the next point is permissions. Permission is another key component of role-based access control. Permission defines the actions or operations that can be performed on resources or data. Permissions are associated with roles, specifying what each role is allowed to do. Some examples of permissions include read, write, execute, delete, create, update, view financial records. Alright, so basically what are permissions? Permissions are those individual actions that can be taken. You understand? So permissions are things like you can read this document, you can write on this document, you can run this program, you can delete this user, you can create this user, you can update this information, you can view financial records. So that is permission. So it's basically the action that you can take on a particular resource, on a particular data. So how does role and permission intertwine? While role is a collection of the permissions. You understand? So permissions are things like, if you say I have permission to read this document, I have permission to write on this document. But a role is when you have a collection of permissions. Maybe you can read, you can write, you can execute, but you cannot delete. That is a role. You understand? So when you combine these roles, when you combine these permissions and give it a title, you understand, that's a role. You get. So just imagine as an administrator, you can perform almost everything in an organization. You understand? So that is your role. Then if you are a HR personnel and come to the organization, you can view financial, you can view what they call it, the payroll, the employees payroll, you can view so many things, you can edit some things, but there are some you cannot come and execute application because you are HR, you understand? And so that is your set of permissions, you understand? And the set of permissions are basically called roles. So once they put like a group of permissions together and assign it a title, that has now become a role. I hope this is clear. So the next point is users. So users are individuals, employees, or system entity who interact with the role-based access control system. So basically, what are users? Users are basically the employees or the staffs that come into the organization, or the individuals. So when an individual comes into an organization, there is an account that is created for a person. So the organization, the administrator will create an account for that person. So once the account has been created for the person is now assigned a role based on their job description, or based on like what they came to the organization for. So if you are coming to your organization as an HR personnel, you are going to be assigned the HR personnel role. You understand? If you come to an organization as an IT manager, you're going to be assigned the IT manager role. You get. So user management includes creating, modifying, and deactivating the user account. So this is also the administrator responsibility. So you create, once person comes to our organization, you create the account. Sometimes you get to modify the account, and when the person is leaving, you will deactivate the user account. So resources. Resources are the object or assets within the system that users and roles may need access or need to access or manipulate. So basically, what are resources? Resources are the objects. Resources are the things that you want to be editing, you want to be deleting. They are things that um an individual needs access to. So things like your files, things like databases, things like applications, network services. You understand? So these are resources. These are what exactly you need to perform actions on. You get, these are the things that okay your role encompasses. So let's say as an IT support person, your role is to configure devices. So those devices that are configuring are resources. You understand? Those devices that you are adjusting their settings and stuff like that, those things are resources. You get? If you are a developer and you are creating you want to edit or make changes to the application. So the code base, right? The code base, the files for the code base are resources because you need them to do your job. You need them to perform your job. If you are a lawyer of the organization and you need to edit or make changes to their financial documents, those financial documents are resources of the organization because those are the things, those are the objects that you need to make changes to, like the object that you need to have access to. You understand? All right, so other components of role-based access system, we have the role hierarchy. So in role hierarchies, roles are assigned in structured or hierarchical manner, often with parent and child permissions. So permissions as assigned to parent roles are inherited by child roles, simplifying the role assignment process and ensuring that users in child roles have permissions, have access to subsets of the permissions of their parents' role. So let's break it down. So basically, when you say something is a hierarchy, it means that there is parent and there's child. You understand? There's somebody on top and then there's somebody like under that. So let's say for example now you have a role and this role is manager. In an organization you have a role and the role is manager. Then you now have the IT manager, you have the HR manager, you have the which other manager is here? You have the financial manager. So let's say that this base has some certain sort of permissions that you have, like maybe you can all of you can have access to the overview structure of the organization. All the managers have access to a certain managerial meetings. You understand? So that is the parent role. You understand? This is the parent role. You get the parent role. Now, as an IT manager, you have specific roles within your IT department, right, to edit, to have access to the devices and stuff like that. But as you have your own specific rules, you still have access to this primary manager role. Do you get it? So that way, like you don't have to be assigning. Let's say you have like the organization, you have like five different manager roles, and all of them need some basic permissions to do basic things. Like they are like baseline permission as a manager that all managers to have, rather than you opening each of the like creating a role for each of the manager and assigning those permissions one by one. You just create a role, a parent role called manager, assign those basic, those bare minimum managerial roles or managerial permissions, and then create child roles under. That way the child roles can inherit the basic manager roles, you understand? And then it can have its own role, like its own permission of its own self, you understand? So this one will have its own permission of its own self. The HR manager has its own permission, you understand? You get, but the main thing is that the base the base managerial role is there, that's the parent, and while the children can inherit the parent roles. So the next one is session management. So session manager represents the active interaction of users or system entities within the system. Session management ensures that users' access privilege are continuously enforced during their active session. So session management simply means that while the user has access to that resources, while the user is performing certain actions, you understand, the sessions are being managed. You understand? We are ensuring the session management is ensuring that that privilege is being enforced. You understand? So let's say you only have permission to view a document. While you are on that document, while you are looking at that document, session management is at the background ensuring that you just only still have access to view the document and you don't have access to edit the document. So that's what session management is all about. And we have delegation of authorities. Delegation of authorities allow higher level roles to delegate specific permissions or roles to lower level roles. This mechanism enables role-based access control to be more flexible and responsive to organizational structure and hierarchy. So basically, for role-based access control, role-based asset control when it comes to delegation of authority. So let's say as an IT manager, you have certain responsibilities, but you want to delegate this to your intern or your junior personnel, junior IT support person to work on. So you for a specific period of time, you can give that individual some set of permissions, you understand, to perform that actions. You to make this more flexible. You understand, to make it a lot more flexible for like people to take on different permissions and perform different activities in an organization. And next one is security policies and access control lists. So security policies are often used to define the access control rules that governs role-based access control implementation. Access control list specifies which roles or user have access to specific resources and what actions they can perform. So basically, access control lists and policies go hand in hand. They help to ensure constant access control management. You understand? It's just basically access control list specify like, okay, this is the role and this is the permission that this role has on specific resources you get. So basically, security policies and access control lists help to manage access control, help to ensure that the policy or the access control rules and regulations are being followed through and through. So we have different types of role-based access control, right? So number one, we have the standard role-based access control. So standard role-based access control is a basic form of role-based access control. Users are assigned roles and roles are associated with permissions. It enforces the principle of least privilege by granting user access based on their roles. It provides a structured and organized way to manage access. So basically, standard role-based access control is like the basic form of role-based access control. It's just basically you just um assign, you create a role, you give the role some permissions, some privileges, you can edit this, you can edit that, and then you get a user and say, okay, let me add this user to this role, or let me assign a role to this user. You understand? Just or assign a user to this role. Just basically, it's just like, okay, I'm an administrator. I will just go create a role, give the role permission, and add a user to the role. That's just the basic standard. That is what is called the standard role-based access control. You get. So it enforces the principle of least privilege. Talked about least privilege so many times. Not giving people more than they are required. You get, and it provides a structure and organized way to manage access control. So rather than you going individual by individual, like individual person by a user account, you come in by assigning permissions one by one. Rather than doing everything one by one, what do? You just do everything together. You create a role, give it permissions, and assign users to that role. Then the next one we have is hierarchical role-based access control. So it just follows an hierarchy, like a tree base. This one has parent and children. This is what I was talking about. How you can create a parent role and let the child inherit that parent role, parent permissions and responsibilities and stuff like that. About the child role also has its own specific roles that it should work on or specific permissions that it can do. It also have access to the parents' permissions. So it is used in complex organization with multiple levels of access. So basically, it's used in large organizations or large corporate organizations where there are different departments and there are different level of access privileges and stuff like that. So we talked about the managers one. In an organization where you have like five different managers, you have different departments, or you have like yeah, you have different departments. You have different departments. You everybody and each department has a manager. So all the managers should have some certain level of privilege, like basic certain level of privilege. Then the based on your department now, you now have your own certain level of permissions and certain level of privilege. So basically with this, rather than creating, like let's say IT manager, you add everything, HR manager, you add everything, you just create a parent role and just add those permissions, then create children's role. So those children will automatically now inherit the permissions of the parent role. So this is used for large organizations, corporate organizations where they have like multiple levels of access, and it's not a more complex organization. So for a simple organization, right, a standard role-based administrator, role-based access control would work. But for more complex organizations, organizations that have larger complex structures, you understand, the hierarchical role-based access control should work for them. Then we have the constrained role-based access control. Constrained role-based access control has add constraints or rules to the role assignment. These constraints limit how the roles can be assigned to users based on conditions, based on timing, and based on other contextual factors. So constraint simply means that okay, you've created the role, you've assigned permissions to this role, but there are certain criteria that needs to be met for a certain user to be assigned to this role. So based on, for example, now it can based on location. So if you are not in the country, if you are a remote worker, there are certain, maybe there are certain roles that you cannot be assigned to, even though like you might have the what's the word? Even though you might be of that what do you call it, of that role, like in the organization. Let's say you are an admin, you are a manager, right? But because you are not in the contract a certain period of time, you are not assigned that role, or the role will be removed from you for a certain period of time. You understand? So there's also timing, right? Let's say somebody needs to do something. We have like, let's say you have like um an administrative role, or like a lower down administrative role that somebody needs to take on to do backup every, let's say every week, you understand? So it's only during the time of the backup that that individual can have access to that role. Once the backup time is over, once the backup is complete, the individual loses access to that role, you understand? So basically the constraint role-based access control is based on rules and regulations. So the rules have been created, but based on certain conditions, the user can be assigned to the role. Then we have the static role-based control, role-based access control. In static role-based access control, roles are assigned to users at the time of user creation or role definition. Role assignment remains constant unless manually modified by administrator. It is suitable for organization with relatively stable access requirements. So basically for static role-based access control, once the user comes into the organization, once the user account is created, they are assigned a specific roles, and that role is usually unchanged unless there is a change in the organization or there is a modification by the administrator, you get. So it's mostly used for organization that are stable when it comes to access requirements, right? They don't do there are not a lot of back and forth. Like it's not an organization where like we need people that don't that you need people to do certain things for a particular period of time. It's not like, it's like this organization that your job is stable, you get. If you are HR, all you need to do is just do HR things, you understand? But in an organization where like their JD might not really be stable, that is where dynamic role-based access control comes in. So dynamic role-based access control allow roles to be assigned based on specific user attributes or user requests. Role-based roles are assigned and revoked as needed and provide flexibility to accommodate changing access requirements. It is useful in situations where access control needs are highly dynamic. So this one is used in organization where the JD changes or like the requirement changes. Maybe it can be used in situations where they are running people through department. Maybe they are doing some sort of training. So when they are in this department, they have this role. When they leave and try to a department, they have this role. You understand? It can be used in organizations that have rotational systems where like make their employee try out different roles for certain period of time. Can also be used when maybe there are specific things like, let's say, backing up of the system, or doing specific actions per se. So this will just ensure that, okay, the roles are assigned to this specific user for a specific period of time, and once this time is done, or once this task has been achieved, you understand, the roles are now being revoked. Like, you no longer have permissions to do certain things. So these are the different types of role-based access control. And based on the organizational need, based on how the organization is structured, based on what the organization are doing, like based on like your JD and everything, this is how organizations pick the type of role-based access control that they use. And it's not like set in stone. Like, you can be using a hierarchical role-based access control, and it can also be static. You can also be using hierarchical role-based access control, and it can be dynamic. And sometimes you can incorporate constraints based on the circumstance your organization is going through. So basically, just based on your organization, right? So based on how the organization is, or how the organization structure is, that's how the administrator can implement this role-based access control. So how can role-based access control be applied in different environments? Okay, let's look at corporate environment now. So in the corporate setting, the role-based access control can be used to manage access to sensitive data and system. For example, now we are talking about HR management. HR manager can be granted access to employee records and payroll. The marketing team can have access to marketing collaterals and campaigns, while the IT administrator can have full control over the network resources and system configuration. So this is based on the role. So okay, I am an HR admin. I have access to the employee records. I'm part of the marketing team. I have access to the campaigns. I am the administrator. I have access to the network resources and system configuration. So in healthcare, also healthcare is another industry, and how can it be applied? So the doctor or the physician have access to the patient's record and the diagnostic information. So let's say a patient goes to the hospital, you understand? The person that has your record, the person that can see your when you are talking to the doctor will open your record and see, okay, this is what you've been diagnosed with, this is your record, this is your history, you understand, and now can be able to provide better a more better what consultation for you. You get, then we have the nurse. So the nurse can access the patient charts and the medication data. So like they'll see the chart of the patient, your medications, what drugs you've been on, what drugs you've not been on, what drug you're allergic to. So the nurse has the permission to do that. You understand? Even the doctors too, but in some cases, especially if the doctors are rotationary, you understand, they might limit some of their access. Then the last one is the administrator. So the administrator is basically the one that will configure and maintain their healthcare information service or system. You understand? Maybe they are using an electronic management system, you understand. So the administrator is the one that ensures that. Also the administrator is the one that also controls the network, because in a hospital you need network to do a lot of things, you understand. Some of the systems run on internet, you get. So basically the administrator is one that will handle that. So the administrator will not have access to the permission to the records, patient's record. Why? Because he has no business there. That is not his JD. You understand? The physician or the doctor will not have permission to the network. You understand? To the network configuration. Why is that? It's because it's not his job description. You understand? So that is how role-based access control can be used in different environments. So the next one we have the e-commerce and online retail store. So there is the customer support agent. So these are the people that help to support customers when they are finding it difficult to do certain things. So this role has access to the customer order information and can provide support. So you have to have access to the customer information for you to be able to provide support to the customer. You need to know, okay, what is this customer ordering? What exactly is the problem? So that is why this custom support agent role has the permission to see or to view and in some cases to even edit the customer order information. Then we have the inventory manager. So the inventory manager basically has access to manage the product stock and to check the stock level. So the inventory manager is someone that checks that, okay, these resources that we have, this this product that we have, is it still available? How many is remaining? When do we need to stock up? When do we need? Sometimes even the inventory manager might even have access to the suppliers, because those are the people that ensure that, okay, the products that we have in this store does not finish. You understand? Then the customer have access to their own accounts and their own order history. So the customer can see the products that are available, can manage the product that he or she wants, and then can see what he has ordered over, or he or she has ordered over a period of time. Then we next institution we're looking at is the academic institution. So the academic institution, the professor or the teacher has access to the course materials and have access to grade the student assignments. Then the student role have access to view the class schedule and have access to for course registration information, while the registrar have access to manage student enrollment and academic records. So you can see that in every industry, in the financial industry, in the e-commerce industry, in the academic industry, in the health industry, in an organization, you understand, every this role-based access control can be applied in different ways. It's the same concept, but you get the same concept of giving permissions to a role and then assigning a user to that role, basically. So the process of assigning roles to users based on their job description. Assigning roles to users based on their job description is a critical part of implementing role-based access control in an organization. The process involves several steps to ensure that users are granted appropriate permissions that align with their roles and responsibilities. So now let's see the steps that involves when you are assigning roles to user. Number one, we have role definition. The first and very important step is to define the roles within the organization. Roles should be based on job function, responsibilities, and access requirements. Identify the different roles that exist in an organization. So identify the roles. Like when you go to an organization or gram, like when you see like their structure. You get when you see the structure of an organization, you see, okay, we have HR manager, we have IT support, we have sales representative. Those things are the roles. So that those are like the jobs that are in an organization. So the next step is to do permission assignment. So once you define the roles, once you say, okay, these are the roles I have organization, and these are the job descriptions that are assigned to these roles. Now let's create permissions. So basically permissions are basically the job description on a digital format. Said it before. So if for example now as an HR admin, your job description is to ensure that employees are is to is to what they call it to um what do you call it? Yeah, ensure that employees are paid. You understand? Ensure that employees are paid. You then your permission should be to have access to the payroll. Do you understand? So if as a HR manager, your job is to employ more people, you understand? You will now have access to the employee record, you understand? So basically, like it based on your job description. So if you have a certain job description, your permissions will associate with your permissions should be in regards to that job description. So if for example as a representative now, you are to ensure that sales are going up, ensure that you're marketing, you are ensuring people are buying your product. So you have access to view the sales records, to view the sales data, to update the sales data because you are a sales representative. So a HR person will not have access to update sales data. Why is that? Because the HR person does not need that. It's not in their job description. It's only if they are juggling two different jobs or job JD that you can now give them the permission to do that or add them to the role of a sales representative. So the next point is user assignment. Identify and classify user based on their job description. Assign each user to one or more roles that correspond to their job description. User can have multiple roles if their responsibility overlaps. So basically the next point is assigning the user. Assigning the user. So you just say, okay, this user now you came to this company as a HR, you are going to be assign the HR personnel role. You came to this organization as a sales representative, you are going to be assigned the sales representative role. You get. So first of all, the first process is what? Define the role, define the roles. Define, okay, in our organization structure, what are the roles that are available and what is their job description. Then the next point is permission assignment. So okay, you've gotten your roles ready, you know what the job description is. Now you will now convert those job description to permissions. You understand? So okay, this person should recruit more people, therefore you should have access to employees records. You understand? So that is permission assignment. Then the next one is user role assignment. So this one, you're assigning the user. Now that you've defined the role, you've assigned the permissions, you now go and look for, okay, Ademola is the HR manager, so you now assign um HR manager role to that user. Do you get? So the next one is reviewer and approver. In some organization, there may be a review or approval process to ensure that roles assigned are accurate and in compliance with security and access policies. So reviewer and approval simply means that, okay, even though you've created the role, you've given it permission, you will now go for review. So how does this review work? People that do these reviews are either the managers, the directors, the administrators, you understand, to ensure that you are complying with the access policy of the organization. Then the next point is user training and awareness. So once you've assigned the user a role, you need to educate them on what their role is, what permissions that they have associated with that role, and the limitations of their role. They need to be aware so that they can be held accountable when things do not go as they should be. You understand? Or when things go haywire. You get. So users should be educated on the roles, the permissions, the responsibilities, and the limitations of their role. Then next one we have the ongoing maintenance. So ongoing maintenance simply means that the role keeps being reviewed from time to time. If there is a change in job description, there should be a change in the role. There should be an update in the permissions of that role. If there is a change in the organization structure, like maybe they decide to scrap out a particular role and integrate it with another role, you understand? Maybe they decide to scrap out IT. Maybe in the organization there is IT support and then there is network personnel and decide to merge everything together. So you as the administrator, you will now be the one to merge the permissions together and delete one of the roles. You understand? So that is why we are saying ongoing maintenance. Ongoing maintenance simply means that the roles need to be reflected on, they need to be reviewed. When there's a change, there needs to be an update. Then revoking access. So when an individual's job description changes, you understand, maybe for example now somebody came into the organization as somebody came to the organization as an HR personnel and said that, okay, that he's going to move to the sales department. So the person will now be removed from the HR role. Person will be removed from the HR role you get and be now be added into the sales representative role. You understand? Or if the person leaves the organization, the person will be removed from any role that the person had already and then the account will be disabled. And we have reporting and monitoring. So implementing reporting and monitoring mechanism to track user access and permissions. So reporting and monitoring simply means you are tracking and seeing what the users are doing with their permissions you get. And then there's incident response. In the case of a breach, the role-based access control can identify and isolate the affected users and their roles for investigation and remediation. So let's say there is a breach now, there's a breach in the HR role. All the users under HR role will be isolated and then there'll be more what the word there'll be investigation on that role. Like, okay, how was this role bypassed? How was there a privilege escalation? You understand? So this is basically the process of assigning roles to users based on their job description. So number one is what? To define the role. When you define the role, you go to the organization structure. What are the roles available? What are the job descriptions? Number two is to grant permissions to these roles. So what grant permission means is that you're looking at the job functions and then you are giving permission based on that job function. Number three is to assign the user. So assign a user to a role. So if Tega is employed as an HR personnel, you assign him the HR personnel role. If Energy is assigned as a um NHS is assigned as a sales representative, you will assign him the sales representative role. And the next point is reviewing. So in some organization, they need to be reviewed. There need to be some sort of review, right? And the people that perform these reviewing actions are the managers, the administrators, sometimes the board. It um depends on the permissions. Like for example, now if it is an administrator permission now, obviously like people are going to be very interested to ensure that there is compliance with security and access policy. Then we have the user training. So once a user has been assigned to a role, you train the user, okay, these are the permissions that you can do, these are the things that you can do, these are the things that you cannot do. Then obviously there's ongoing maintenance. If there's a change in the organizational structure, the change should reflect on the roles. Then revoking access when the user leaves or when the job description changes. Then there's also reporting and monitoring to ensure that users are tracked, their permissions are tracked, you are tracking the activities of the users. And then the last one is if there's an incident response, the roles and the individuals can be isolated for investigation and remediation. All right, so what are challenges and potential drawbacks of role-based access? So role-based access often offers many benefits in terms of access control, and it comes with certain challenges and potential drawbacks that organizations should consider. So number one is complexity of implementation. Setting up role-based access control can be a complex process, especially in large organizations with numerous roles and users. So number one is that it can be a complex process of implementing this role. Especially an organization that has like a lot of um responsibilities and a lot of roles. Okay, that is why as an organization, once you start, you need to just start with role-based access control, because trying to do this after you understand, after you're grown is quite difficult to get. Number two is initial administration head overhead. So basically, like the initial setup of role-based access control system can be time-consuming and requires significant administrative effort. So basically, like who is the person that can perform this role access control? You understand? It's basically the administrator. The administrator is the one that will perform this action, right? And to do that, at the beginning stage, it's going to be cumbersome. It's going to be a lot, you understand? Because the administrator is going to be the one to define the roles, to look at the job description, to assign permission. All it's a lot at the beginning. But once the structure has been set up, everything is okay. You understand? Once the structure has been set up, maintenance would be fair enough. You understand? So the next one is role explosion. In some cases, the number of roles can grow significantly, leading to a phenomenon known as role explosion, where there are too many roles and it becomes challenging to manage and maintain the role-based administration system. Yes. So, for example, an organization where roles keep on coming up, you understand? Roles keep on coming up. Like there is this thing, we have different departments. It's a very broad organization, you understand? The roles can now become cumbersome and become a lot for the administrator to manage, you get. So for that, I think one of the best ways to fix this role exposure is using a hierarchical system where there can be an umbrella role where you can assign a lot of basic roles to it, and then now the children role can just inherit. So that way it makes it a lot easier to manage, you get. And then in some cases you need to just merge some roles together. Then role changes and maintenance. Managing role changes and ongoing maintenance can be cumbersome. A job description can involve an employee change roles. Role assignment must be updated, which requires careful monitoring and administration. So basically, the fact is that actually this becomes really cumbersome in large organizations because JDs can always evolve. Like maybe you are trying something and it's not working for you. You are now as a managing, let's say marketing department now. They just do marketing. They now decide that okay, we'll incorporate marketing and social media. You understand? They want to also incorporate digital something too. You understand? So as the role keeps evolving, the administrator has the responsibility to keep on updating the role assignments. You understand? To keep on updating the role permissions you get. So that can become cumbersome for the administrators, especially if there are no much hands in the administrative units. Then we have lack of flexibility. Role-based access control may not easily accommodate situation that requires ad hoc or dynamic changes to access control. So it depends on the type of role-based access control you are making use of. If you are using a static role-based access control, it might be difficult to accommodate changes, especially like when there's a sort of emergency, you understand. Then the overprivileged roles. So in some cases, roles may be assigned more permissions than necessary due to the way privilege are structured. This can lead to overprivileged roles which can increase the risk of unauthorized access. In some cases, right, where like maybe when everything is cumbersome and you just want to just group everything together. So you just group certain roles together, group everything together, give them this permission and be going. Sometimes some of the individuals that are assigned to those roles may not necessarily have the permission, you understand, to perform those actions, might not necessarily have the rights, let me not say permission, have the rights. Their JD might be below, you understand, might be below that. But just because you just want to group everything together because you're tired, you understand, or because it's cumbersome. You can let's say in an organization now, there is the development team now, and then there are the interns. So interns are supposed to have lower levels of privileges because they are not necessarily good at their job description yet. You understand? So you need to have lower level of privilege to reduce the risks, you understand, to reduce errors and stuff like that. But maybe in the team, in the office, they just group everybody together and say and development team. The intern who does not have on a job description level, on the organizational level, should not have the permission to make some edits. Will not have permission to make those edits because of why he has been added to the development team role. So what are the potential role-based access control bypass techniques? So from a security perspective, it is essential to be aware of the potential role-based access control bypass techniques that can be exploited by malicious actors to gain unauthorized access to resources or perform actions that they shouldn't have access to. So basically, what are the weaknesses or what are the techniques that can be used to exploit the role-based access control? So number one, we have privilege escalation. Privilege escalation: malicious users may attempt to escalate their privilege by exploiting vulnerability in the role-based access control system. This can involve manipulating user role or permission to gain access to a higher privilege role. So privilege escalation simply means that a malicious person here wants to take on a higher privilege role, and what person can do might be trying to edit or manipulate some user roles or permission so that they can have access to that higher privileged role. And the next one is role impersonation. So some role-based access control system may not adequately verify the identity of the user when switching roles. You understand? Malicious user can impersonate other roles and perform unauthorized actions. So if the role-based access control system does not adequately verify the identity of the user, you understand, this can lead to the malicious actor pretending to be like a certain user, because the role, like when you are switching roles, it does not verify that okay, this user is not supposed to be like not supposed to be part of this role, you understand. It does not adequately verify that, and this can lead to role impersonation. Then we have session hijacking. Session hijacking simply means that the attacker attempts to hijack a session and can gain access to resources with the hijack section. So let's say for example now the IT manager has been working on, let's say, on configuring a system, right, or doing some sort of configurations online to the website online, and then an attacker now decides to just hijack that session. So if the session hijacking is successful, he would have the permission of the IT manager or have the permission of the developer manager, because he doesn't have to put in credential or anything. He has already hijacked the session. And in that session that he has hijacked, this particular user has access to these privileges. You get. Then there's the injection attack. Injection attack may attempt to inject malicious code such as SQL, script injection into the role-based access control system. And that's the direct object reference. So malicious users might try to access resources directly by manipulating the URLs or reference by bypassing the role-based access control system. So basically, it's like when um you are trying to, for example, now let's use Google Slide, even though like they don't have that issue, right? Let's say you on the Google Slide, if you use like a Google Slide, okay, and you paste a particular link, there is when you're looking at the link, there's a place called you will see edit there. You understand? So if the attacker might know, okay, is to change and do that edit, maybe I have access to edit this document now. You get, so by the time he does that and it works, right? Google Sheet doesn't work like that, or Google Slide does not work like that. But I get the attacker does that and it works. He has done a direct object reference in the sense that he just manipulated URL and now he has access to that. He has access to perform certain actions that the attacker did not have access to do before. Then we have the API abuse. If an application exposes APIs, attackers could try to abuse this interface by sending malicious requests that don't properly enforce the role-based access policies. So if an API is exposed, the attacker will try to exploit it by sending requests, right? And those requests that they don't enforce the role-based access control policies. Then the next one is forged requests. Attackers may craft requests to mimic legitimate requests from authorized users, thereby bypassing the role-based access control to access or modify resources. So they can camouflage or make certain requests that will mimic an authorized user request. Know when, for example, now when you are on a sheet, maybe someone send an Excel sheet to you or someone send a document to you and I say you don't have access to do this thing, request access. You understand? It can forge something like that just so that he can have access to that particular resources or can modify that particular resource. You understand? Then we have section fixation. So malicious users can exploit section fixation vulnerability to set their user ID to a valid user session, effectively taking over the identity and associated access. So session fixation is simply when the attacker knows the user session ID, and what he has to do is to set his own ID to the user session ID. That way, he will not take over that user session. You understand? And the next one is brute force or credential stuffing. Attackers may attempt to brute force users' credential or exploit known password to gain access to accounts with certain roles or permission. So basically, brute force attack. So if he knows that okay, this person in an organization, you understand, has this sort of permission, you get, so he will now want to do brute force attack to get the username and password just so that he can have access to those permissions again. And then the last one is inadequate logging and monitoring. A lack of robust monitoring, logging and monitoring can make it difficult to detect and respond to role-based access control bypass attempts. Monitoring users' activities and access control events is essential for identifying suspicious behavior. So basically, if there is no adequate logging and adequate monitoring of user accounts, right, it makes it difficult to detect when any of these bypassing activities is happening. For example, now let's say an administrator starts going through all the files and downloading all the files. The administrator has not done that before, right? So if you don't monitor if you are not logging the user activities, you will not know that what is going on. You will not know that this account has been infiltrated. You get, because you are not logging it on. You don't have any way that you can track this. Then to mitigate this bypass techniques, organizations implement the following security practices. Number one, regularly audit and review role assignments to ensure that they are accurate and appropriate. So you have to audit it, you have to regularly check, you have to do regular reviews. You understand? Then implement strong section management and authentication mechanisms. Yes, very important. Strong session management so that the attacker cannot hijack the session. The attacker cannot get the valid user ID and take over the session. And authentication mechanism, so that whenever like a role is being switched, let's say you're switching from one role to the other role, the role mechanism checks that this user is actually authenticated. You understand? And enforce strict input validation and security control to prevent injection attacks. So that's to ensure that the inputs are being validated. So if you are asking for a number, the input should not be an alphabet. You understand? Then apply proper access control mechanisms at the data or resource level. Then employ comprehensive monitoring and logging to detect unusual or unauthorized access attempt. Make sure that all activities are being logged, all activities are being monitored. Stay informed about role-based access control best practices and security updates for role-based access control systems in use. So make sure you update the system. If there's any changes to the role-based access control system, make sure you update the system. Then conduct security assessment. You need to conduct security assessment like penetration testing, code review to identify vulnerabilities, you understand, and to address those vulnerabilities. Then provide security training and awareness programs for users, you understand, to recognize and report security activities. So the goal is to just make sure that your users, your employees, right, are up to date, like they know, okay, if I see this and this and this might mean a compromised account, you understand. So, and also ensure users to be very careful about their username and their password. So thank you very much for the class. So these are discussions. What are the key components of role-based access control? From our discussion, what do you think are the key components of role-based access control? I know we talked about roles, talked about permissions, we talked about role hierarchies, we talked about so many things. So what exactly are the key components of role-based access control? Then what are the challenges of implementing and managing role-based access control? How can these challenges be overcome, and how do you design and implement a role-based access control system? So if you have any questions, please send your questions to this link, right? Send your questions here. Then assignments, compare and explain the difference between permissions and privilege in terms of role-based access control. So we talked about adding permissions to a role, adding privileges to a role. So can you differentiate what is it like? Can you explain like in the concept of role-based access control, permissions and privilege? Then discuss the significance of role hierarchies in role-based access control. Thank you very much and do have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye.